The wine glass slipped from my fingers and shattered against the kitchen floor the moment I saw them. I stood frozen at my kitchen window, watching my husband of 8 years, Michael, passionately kissing my best friend in our driveway. They didn't even have the decency to drive somewhere else. No, they chose our home, right outside the house where our children were sleeping. I still remember how the red wine spread across the white tile like blood, how the shards reflected the dim kitchen light. That image burned into my memory forever, just like the betrayal that came with it. Rebecca had been my best friend since college, 15 years of friendship. She held my hand through my father's funeral. I was her maid of honor. She was the godmother to my twins. And there she was, her fingers tangled in my husband's hair, laughing at something he whispered in her ear. I should have seen it coming. The late nights at the office, the sudden business trips, the way Michael's eyes would light up when Rebecca visited our home, the inside jokes they shared that somehow excluded me from my own living room. "Mommy, why are you crying?" My 5-year-old son Oliver stood in the doorway, clutching his stuffed dinosaur, his twin sister Lily right behind him, thumb in mouth, eyes wide with concern. I quickly wiped my tears, forcing a smile. "It's nothing, sweetie. Mommy just dropped a glass. Go back to bed, okay?" After tucking them back in, I returned to the kitchen and cleaned up the mess. My hands were trembling so badly I cut myself on one of the glass shards. But I barely felt the pain. The emotional wound was too deep, too raw. I didn't confront them that night. I waited, watched. When Michael came in, smelling like her perfume, I pretended to be asleep. I listened to him shower, washing away the evidence of his betrayal. I counted each breath I took, reminding myself that I needed to stay calm, to think clearly. The children needed me stable. The next morning, I acted normal, made breakfast, packed lunches, kissed the kids goodbye as they boarded the school bus. Michael kissed my cheek before leaving for work, like everything was fine, like he hadn't shattered our vows just hours before. That afternoon, Rebecca called me, her voice so casual, so normal. "Hey, Cal, want to grab coffee tomorrow? I have some exciting news to share." Exciting news. That's what she called it. "Sure," I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. The usual place? That night, I lay awake beside the man who had once promised to love only me, planning what I would say to the woman who had promised to always have my back. The ceiling fan spun above me, around and around, just like the thoughts in my head. I've always been the reliable one, the steady one, the one who fixes problems, not causes them. Michael used to say that's why he fell in love with me. My strength, my dependability. Rebecca used to call me her rock. And now I was crumbling inside, but I refused to let it show. The next day, I sat across from Rebecca at our favorite coffee shop, the place where we'd spent countless hours sharing secrets, dreams, fears. The irony wasn't lost on me. "I don't know how to say this," she began, her eyes bright with what looked like genuine excitement. "But Michael and we've fallen in love." I took a sip of my latte. It tasted like ash. "How long?" I asked, my voice quiet. 6 months, she admitted, having the grace to look slightly ashamed. "We didn't mean for it to happen, Callie. It just did. We've been fighting it, but we can't anymore. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of betrayal, of making a fool out of me in my own home, in front of my own children. I know this is hard," she continued, reaching for my hand across the table. I pulled back before she could touch me. "But I hope someday you can forgive us. You're still my best friend." That's when I laughed. A hollow, empty sound that made heads turn at nearby tables. "Your best friend?" I repeated, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "Is that what you call someone whose life you destroy?" Her face fell. "Callie, please!" "No," I cut her off, standing up. "You don't get to ask anything of me. Not anymore." I walked out of that coffee shop a different woman than the one who had walked in. Something had hardened inside me. A resolve. A determination. They wanted their happiness at my expense? Fine. But they would learn that every choice has consequences. Every betrayal has its price. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in psychological torture. Michael moved out, claiming he needed space to figure things out. as if there was anything to figure out when he was already sleeping at Rebecca's apartment. He promised the children he wasn't abandoning them, that Daddy just needed to live somewhere else for a while. Oliver cried himself to sleep every night for 2 weeks. Lily stopped talking altogether. But the worst part wasn't Michael's absence. It was the pity, the whispers, the way people looked at me when I dropped the kids off at school. Did you hear? Rebecca stole Callie's husband. They were best friends since college. Poor Callie. First her career takes a back seat for his, and now this. Yes, my career. I'd been a promising architect, on track to make partner at my firm when I got pregnant with the twins. Michael and I had agreed I'd take a few years off, then ease back in part-time. But somehow, a few years turned into 5, and part-time never materialized. Meanwhile, Michael's career as a corporate lawyer flourished, with Rebecca, his colleague at the same firm, by his side. I'd given up everything for our family, my ambitions, my independence. And this was my reward. Betrayal served with a side of public humiliation. Rebecca tried to call me repeatedly, leaving voicemails filled with apologies that sounded more like justifications. We didn't plan this, Callie. Sometimes love just happens. I never meant to hurt you. We hope you can understand someday. Understand? What was there to understand about sleeping with your best friend's husband? About looking her children in the eye while secretly destroying their family? Michael wasn't much better. During our first meeting with the divorce attorneys, he had the audacity to suggest I was being unreasonable about the custody arrangement. He wanted the twins every weekend, conveniently when Rebecca was free from work. The kids need to adjust to Rebecca being in their lives, he explained, as if he were suggesting something completely rational. I stared at him across the conference table. The woman who helped destroy their family? The woman who they've called Auntie Becca their entire lives? You want them to start calling her what? Stepmom? Replacement mom? Don't be dramatic, Callie, he sighed, exchanging glances with his attorney. This kind of hostility only hurts the children. That was the pattern. Every time I expressed anger, I was being dramatic. Every time I stood up for myself, I was making things difficult. Every time I refused to make their betrayal easier on them, I was not thinking about the children. But I was thinking about my children. All the time. Thinking about how to protect them from the pain their father and godmother had inflicted. Thinking about how to rebuild the security they'd shattered. The divorce proceedings dragged on. Michael fought for every penny, claiming that since I'd chosen to be a stay-at-home mom, I wasn't entitled to half of what he'd built. Never mind that I'd put my own career on hold to raise his children and manage his household. Never mind that I'd supported him through law school with my architect's salary before the kids came along. You should be grateful for the child support, his attorney had the nerve to tell me. Many women get much less. The final blow came when I discovered they'd been planning this for months. Not just the affair, the exit strategy. Michael had been moving money into separate accounts. He'd been documenting every parenting mistake I'd made over the past year. He'd consulted with the top 3 divorce attorneys in our city, not to hire them, but to create a conflict of interest so I couldn't. And Rebecca? She'd been playing both sides, listening to my marriage troubles, offering sympathetic advice while sleeping with my husband, taking notes on my vulnerabilities, my fears, my weaknesses, all ammunition for Michael to use against me later. I gave everything to them, I whispered to my sister Sarah on the phone one night, after the twins were finally asleep. My youth, my career, my trust, and they discarded me like I was nothing. You're not nothing, Sarah said firmly, and they haven't won yet. She was right. They hadn't won yet. But they thought they had. That's the thing about people like Michael and Rebecca. They're so convinced of their own superiority, their own righteousness, that they never see the countermove coming. They thought I was just the dutiful wife, the loyal friend, the devoted mother. They never realized I was so much more. And they never imagined I'd been watching them make their mistakes, collecting their secrets, remembering every lie, every manipulation, every moment of gaslighting, building my case, piece by piece, while they thought I was falling apart. They wanted a war? I'd give them one. But on my terms, not theirs. I didn't break down. I didn't lash out. Instead, I went very, very quiet. The kind of quiet that should have terrified them if they'd been paying attention. The divorce was finalized 6 months after that night I saw them kissing in our driveway. Michael got his freedom, his girlfriend, and a custody arrangement that suited his new lifestyle. The twins every other weekend and Wednesday dinners. I got the house, which he considered a burden, primary custody, which he saw as me doing the hard work of parenting, and a settlement that his attorney had smugly described as generous, but would barely cover our expenses for 5 years. Rebecca moved in with Michael a week after the divorce was final. So tasteful. So considerate. What neither of them knew was that I had been meticulously planning during those 6 months. Not just surviving, strategizing. First, I reconnected with my old architecture mentor, Diane. We met for lunch at an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place Michael and Rebecca frequented with their lawyer colleagues. I made sure to dress impeccably, to smile genuinely, to appear as though my life was completely under control. "I've been following your work from afar," Diane told me, her eyes sharp behind her designer glasses. "That urban renewal project in Boston was brilliant." "Thank you," I replied, smoothing my napkin across my lap, "but I'm ready for a new challenge." By the end of lunch, I had an offer to join her new boutique firm as a partner. The catch? I'd need to travel to their other offices occasionally. New York, Chicago, sometimes for days at a time. Perfect. Next, I reached out to Michael's mother, Eleanor. She had been coldly polite since the divorce, careful not to take sides too obviously. But I knew she disapproved of how Michael had handled things. She had raised him better than that. "The twins miss you," I told her over tea in her immaculate living room. "And I worry they're losing connection with your family." Eleanor's eyes softened. "I miss them terribly. That woman, Rebecca, she's so uncomfortable around me that Michael barely brings the children by anymore." I nodded sympathetically. "It's such a shame. Family is so important, especially now. The children need stability." 2 hours later, we had established a new tradition. Sunday dinners at Eleanor's, with me dropping off the twins and picking them up later. A perfect alibi for my new project. Gradually, I built my network. Sarah, who had always despised Michael's condescension, eagerly agreed to be part of my plan. My college roommate Taylor, now a paralegal at a competing law firm, provided invaluable insights into the inner workings of Michael's firm. But the true masterstroke came from an unexpected source. Rebecca's younger sister, Natalie. "I can't believe she did this to you," Natalie said when we met secretly at a cafe 3 towns over. "Rebecca always had to have what everyone else had. When we were kids, she ruined my favorite doll because our parents got it for me first." "I'm not looking for revenge," I lied smoothly. "Just justice. For my children." Natalie leaned forward. "Rebecca's been hiding something from Michael. Something big." My heart raced, but I kept my expression neutral. "Oh?" "She's been offered a junior partnership at the London office. She's planning to accept it and convince Michael to move there with her. London. An ocean away from my children." "When?" I asked, my voice steady despite the panic rising in my chest. "She has to decide by the end of the month. She's afraid to tell Michael until she's sure he'll agree to go." I thanked Natalie and drove home in a daze. They were planning to take my children to another continent, to separate them from me, their school, their friends, their grandmother. Everything familiar. That night, after tucking the twins in bed, I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of wine and a notebook. The plan I had been formulating suddenly crystallized. I knew exactly what I needed to do. First, I needed Michael and Rebecca to believe they had won completely, that I had accepted my defeat and was moving on. I started dating casually, nothing serious, just enough to create the impression that I was looking forward, not back. I redecorated the house, removing all traces of Michael. I joined a yoga class and lost the stress weight I'd gained during the divorce. I smiled at school events. I was cordial during custody exchanges. "You seem different," Michael commented one evening when picking up the kids. I shrugged. "Life goes on. We all have to adapt." He looked almost disappointed. Had he wanted me to stay shattered? To remain the victim of his betrayal forever? Meanwhile, I was carefully documenting everything. Every time Michael was late for pickup, every cancellation of his parenting time, every complaint from the children about Rebecca's impatience with them, every appointment he missed, every school event he skipped because of work. I set up a separate email account where I forwarded all our communications. I recorded our phone calls, legal in our state with single-party consent. I kept meticulous financial records, but most importantly, I cultivated my relationship with Rebecca herself. Gradually, over coffee dates she had hesitantly suggested to clear the air for the children's sake, I transformed from betrayed ex-wife to reluctant acquaintance to something approaching a friend again. "I can't believe how mature you're being about all this," she told me, her relief palpable. "Michael was so worried you'd be difficult." I smiled, a perfect mask of forgiveness. What would be the point? We all have to move forward. I watched her relax, month by month, watched her guard come down, watched her begin to trust that I had accepted my new role in the background of their perfect life. All while I was setting my trap, the key pieces fell into place when my new job with Diane's firm came through. My first major assignment? A 3-week project in Seattle that couldn't be handled remotely. "It's awful timing," I told Michael during our next custody exchange, carefully crafting my expression to show professional excitement mixed with maternal concern. "But I can't turn down this opportunity. My career is finally back on track." He frowned. 3 weeks? What about the kids?" "That's why I'm talking to you now," I said reasonably. "I was hoping you could take them full-time while I'm gone. It would be so much better than hiring a live-in nanny they don't know." I could see the calculations happening behind his eyes. 3 weeks of full custody would strengthen his position if he later wanted to argue for more parenting time, or a move to London. "Of course," he said magnanimously. "Rebecca and I can handle it." I smiled, hiding my triumph. "Thank you. The children will be so much happier with their father." Everything was in place. Now I just had to wait for them to make the final mistake. The morning I was scheduled to leave for Seattle, I hugged Oliver and Lily tightly at Michael's front door. Rebecca stood awkwardly behind him, trying to look supportive. "Be good for Daddy and Rebecca," I told the twins, kissing their foreheads. "I'll call every night before bedtime." "Why do you have to go, Mommy?" Lily asked, her lower lip trembling. "It's just for work, sweetheart. I'll be back before you know it." I handed Michael a detailed schedule of the children's activities, medication instructions for Oliver's mild asthma, and emergency contacts. "Everything's color-coded," I explained. "Blue for Oliver, pink for Lily, purple for shared activities." Michael rolled his eyes slightly. "We'll be fine, Callie. They're with their father, not some stranger." I nodded, ignoring the barb. "Of course. I just want to make sure nothing gets missed." Rebecca stepped forward. "Don't worry. I've taken time off work to help. It'll be like a 3-week family vacation." I smiled, noting how she'd already reframed my children and ex-husband as her family. "That's so thoughtful of you." As I drove away, I checked my rearview mirror to see Michael already on his phone, the children standing forgotten on the porch as Rebecca ushered them inside. Right on cue. I didn't go to Seattle. I checked into a hotel 40 minutes away, close enough to monitor the situation, but far enough that I wouldn't accidentally run into anyone who knew me. Then I waited. The first few days went smoothly, as I expected. Michael was on his best behavior, sending me photos of happy children at the park, at dinner, playing in the backyard. Rebecca was trying hard to prove herself as the perfect stand-in mother. I called the twins every night as promised, listening carefully to what they shared about their days. Oliver mentioned that Daddy has to work in his office a lot, and Lily complained that Becca doesn't cut the sandwiches right. By day 5, the cracks started showing. Michael called, sounding stressed. "Oliver has a field trip tomorrow? There's nothing on the calendar you gave me." "It's on the blue sheet, 3rd page," I replied calmly. "I put the permission slip and money in his folder last week." "Well, he doesn't have it now. Can you email me another copy?" "Of course," I said, sending it immediately from my prepared files. Day 8 brought the first real crisis. Lily's dance recital, a major event she'd been practicing for months, conflicted with an important client dinner Michael couldn't miss. Rebecca would have to take her alone. "She's being difficult," Rebecca whispered into the phone while Lily apparently had a meltdown in the background. "She says she won't go without you there." "Put her on the phone," I said, my heart breaking for my daughter even as my plan progressed perfectly. "Mommy?" Lily sobbed. "Please come home. I don't want Becca to take me. She doesn't know how to do my hair right." "Sweetheart, Mommy can't come home yet. But you know what? I bet if you ask really nicely, Becca will learn how to do your hair exactly how you like it. Why don't you show her the YouTube video we always watch together?" After calming Lily down, Rebecca came back on the line. "Thank you," she said, sounding exhausted. "I had no idea they needed so much attention." "They're children," I replied simply. "They need consistency and patience." By the end of the second week, the perfect facade had completely crumbled. Michael was missing more and more parenting time due to urgent work matters. Rebecca was overwhelmed and clearly regretting her decision to take time off work. The children were becoming increasingly difficult, missing their routine, their home, their mother. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. On day 17, I received a text from Rebecca. "Can we talk? Alone?" We arranged a video call for when the children were at school and Michael was at the office. Rebecca looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, hair hastily pulled back, wearing what appeared to be the same sweater she'd had on during our call 2 days earlier. "I can't do this," she blurted out before I could even say hello. "The twins they're exhausting. Oliver won't eat anything I cook." Lily cried for an hour last night because I washed her favorite pajamas with the wrong detergent. "And Michael is barely here. He's working late every night, leaving me to handle everything." I made my expression concerned but not surprised. "Children need stability. It's a big adjustment for them." "But you make it look so easy," she exclaimed, running a hand through her tangled hair. "How do you do this every day?" "Practice," I said simply. "And it's my job. My most important job." She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "There's something else. Something I haven't told Michael yet." I waited, heart pounding. "I've been offered a partnership in London. It's an incredible opportunity, but..." She looked around the chaos of the living room visible behind her, toys scattered everywhere. "I'm not sure I can handle being a stepmom on another continent. Michael assumes the kids would come with us, at least for holidays and summers, but after these 3 weeks..." She shook her head. "What are you saying, Rebecca?" I asked carefully. "I need help," she admitted, looking defeated. "I can't do your job. No one can." That was my opening. "Maybe there's a solution," I suggested tentatively. "One that would work for everyone." "I'll try anything at this point," she said desperately. "What if, instead of competing for the role of mother to my children, you became something else to them? Something that would still keep you in their lives, but in a way that works better for everyone." "What do you mean?" she asked, confusion creasing her brow. "What if you became their special caregiver when they visit Michael? Not trying to replace me, but working with me instead of against me. You could go to London, pursue your career, and when the children visit, you'd have a clear role, a professional one." "Like a nanny?" she asked, looking simultaneously offended and intrigued. "A specialized childcare provider," I corrected smoothly. "Someone who knows their routines, their preferences, who has their best interests at heart. Someone who can build her own relationship with them without trying to take my place." I could see the wheels turning in her head. A way to keep Michael, accept the London position, and redefine her relationship with the children in a way that had clear boundaries and lowered expectations. "Michael would never agree to that," she said finally. "Let me worry about Michael," I replied. "Do we have an agreement?" She nodded slowly, relief washing over her features. "Yes. God, yes." Within hours of that call, I put the next phase of my plan into motion. I contacted my attorney with evidence of Michael's neglect during his 3 weeks of full custody. The missed appointments, the late pickups from school, the nights he left the children with an overwhelmed Rebecca while he worked late. I forwarded the recordings of my calls with the children, their increasing distress clearly documented. I submitted the journal entries they'd made as part of our Staying Connected While Apart project, full of revelations about their time with Daddy and Becca. Then I called Michael. "We need to talk about the custody arrangement," I said without preamble when he answered. "Now isn't a good time, Callie," he said, his voice tight with stress. "It never is, but this can't wait. I know about London." Silence on the line. "Rebecca told you?" he finally asked. "She didn't have to. But yes, we've talked. And I have a proposal that will work for everyone." 2 days later, we met in my attorney's office. Michael arrived looking haggard, without Rebecca. "Where is she?" I asked innocently. "At home, with the kids," he admitted grudgingly. "They've been difficult today." My attorney laid out the new terms. I would retain full physical custody. Michael would have visitation rights, but any time he couldn't personally be with the children, they would return to me, unless I approved an alternative caregiver. If they moved to London, visitations would be limited to school holidays, with me accompanying the children on their first 3 international trips to ease the transition. "This is ridiculous," Michael sputtered. "You can't dictate who cares for the children during my time with them." "Actually, she can," my attorney replied calmly. "Given the documented evidence of your neglect during this 3-week period, a judge would likely impose even stricter limitations." "What evidence?" Michael demanded. My attorney slid a folder across the table. Inside was everything. Timeline of Michael's absences, school records showing he'd missed pickup times, medical notes indicating Oliver's asthma management had been inconsistent, and statements from the children's teachers about their declining emotional state. "There's more," I said quietly. "Much more. But I'm hoping we can resolve this amicably, for the children's sake." Michael paled as he flipped through the documentation. "You set this up," he accused. "You knew I'd struggle with full-time parenting. I gave you an opportunity to step up," I corrected. "You chose not to take it." In the end, he signed the new agreement. He had no choice. The evidence was overwhelming, and he knew it would only get worse if we went to court. As he stood to leave, defeated, I added casually, "Oh, and Rebecca has agreed to act as the children's caregiver during your visitations. For compensation, of course. I've already sent her some training materials." His face contorted with confusion. "What are you talking about?" "Ask her," I replied simply. "She's very eager to define her new role in the children's lives." As the door closed behind him, my attorney turned to me with newfound respect. "That was impressive." I gathered my papers calmly. "No, that was justice." 1 year later, I stood in my newly renovated home office, reviewing blueprints for an affordable housing project our firm had been awarded. Through the window, I could see Oliver and Lily playing in the backyard, their laughter floating up to me on the summer breeze. Michael and Rebecca had moved to London 3 months after our new custody agreement was signed. Their relationship hadn't survived the transition. Between the stress of the move, Rebecca's demanding new position, and the revelation that she had essentially negotiated herself into becoming a paid caregiver for his children, the foundation of their relationship had crumbled. They tried to make it work. During the children's first visit to London, with me staying in a nearby hotel as agreed, I watched Rebecca transform from the other woman to the help before my eyes. She followed my detailed instructions for the children's care with grim determination, her resentment barely concealed. Michael didn't fare much better. Stripped of his parental authority and forced to abide by my rules even during his visitation time, he became increasingly frustrated. Without Rebecca's emotional support, she was too busy building her career, the very thing she'd criticized me for sacrificing. He floundered. "This isn't what I wanted," he complained during the custody exchange at the end of that first visit. "You've turned Rebecca into some kind of employee." "No," I corrected him calmly. "She did that herself when she decided my children needed a new mother." By the children's second visit to London 6 months later, Rebecca and Michael were living separately. She still fulfilled her obligation to care for the children during Michael's workday, at a premium rate I'd specified in our agreement. But the romance was over. "I never should have let you manipulate me," Rebecca told me bitterly during that visit, after the children were asleep. "You never should have slept with my husband," I replied evenly. "Actions have consequences. Now, a year into our new arrangement, things had found their natural balance. Michael had returned to the States, taking a position at his firm's New York office, close enough to visit the children more regularly, but far enough that he posed no threat to our stability. Rebecca remained in London, her career flourishing, her brief attempt at motherhood a humiliating memory she rarely spoke of. As for me, I had reclaimed my life piece by piece. My architecture career was thriving. The twins were happy and secure, no longer caught in a tug-of-war between households. I had even started dating again, a kind, thoughtful man who understood that my children would always come first. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Michael. "The kids still coming this weekend?" he asked without preamble. "Yes, their bags are packed." I kept my tone professional, emotionless. "And who's watching them while I'm at the conference on Saturday?" I smiled to myself. Every time he had to ask this question, it was a small victory. "I've arranged for Mrs. Henderson from their school to stay with them. The children adore her." "Not Rebecca?" he asked, a touch of bitterness in his voice. "Rebecca's in Tokyo this month for work, but she sends her love to the children." She didn't, of course. Her relationship with the twins had devolved into obligatory birthday cards and awkward video calls a few times a year. The woman who had once been Auntie Becca was now just a peripheral figure in their lives, exactly as she deserved to be. After ending the call, I went downstairs and out into the yard. The twins ran to me immediately, wrapping their arms around my waist, faces turned up to mine with complete trust and love. "Can we have pizza tonight, Mom?" Oliver asked. "And watch a movie?" Lily added hopefully. "Absolutely," I agreed, ruffling their hair. "It's a perfect night for it." Later, as we curled up on the couch together, the twins safely tucked against me, I reflected on the journey of the past 2 years. The betrayal had nearly destroyed me. The divorce had challenged me. But in the end, I hadn't just survived. I had reclaimed my power. Not through violence, not through cruelty, but through patience, strategy, and an absolute refusal to be discarded. Some people mistake kindness for weakness, gentleness for fragility. Michael and Rebecca had made that error with me. They assumed that because I had devoted myself to my family, I had somehow diminished myself. They never understood that my capacity for love was matched only by my capacity for justice. The twins fell asleep during the movie, one on either side of me, their breathing deep and peaceful. I kissed each of their foreheads gently. "No one will ever come between us again," I whispered to my sleeping children. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. After all, the most important lesson I'd learned was simple. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about rebuilding yourself so completely that they become irrelevant to your happiness. And in the quiet moments like this, surrounded by the family I had protected, I knew I had won the war they never